Hello and welcome to the i3 lecture series hosted by the Masters in Digital Photography here at the School of Visual Arts. I'm Julie Graham. Our guest tonight is photographer, director and filmmaker Shravya Karg. Shravya was raised in India and is now based in Brooklyn. Since graduating from SVA, they have gained 10 years of experience in organic, authentic storytelling with a focus on queer and South Asian stories around themes of identity, community, and solidarity. Shravya works with nonprofits, publications, and brands, including the New York Times, Bloomberg Businessweek, Kiplinger Magazine, the American Craft Council, Rotary International, and Amazon. They've won several awards from Sony and others. A 2025 artist in residency at the Center for Photography Woodstock in Kingston, held exhibitions at locations including Somerset House in London, Art Space in New York, and is currently part of the Masters in Digital Photography exhibit at Photoville. Shravya also specializes in wedding and event photography and portraiture. And just on a side note, we met here at the last lecture and I was able to know who it was because they have a nice portrait of themselves on their website, on their About page. And there is nothing quite like missing an opportunity for someone like me to come and say hi to you by either not having a picture of yourself on your website at all or having a picture of yourself with a camera in front of your face so we can't actually see who you are. Top tips with Julie Graham. Big hand please for Shravya.
Yeah, definitely have your photo on your website. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for spending your Tuesday night with me. I am Shravya Karg. It was nice thank you, Julie, for having me here. It was nice to hear your life and 10 years of your life reflected back to you. But essentially, this talk is about I like taking photos. I am a photographer, artist, and director based in Brooklyn, New York, and raised in Vijayawada. Today I'm going to talk about my creative practice, the process, some of the projects that I've been working on, and also my editorial and commercial portfolio, and some marketing techniques, so hopefully it's useful for our lovely grads here. I'm going to start off with the project that I'm currently working on, which is also being exhibited at Photoville. Thank you to SVA, Tom and Marco. The current project that I'm working on is called Velusta. Velusta is kind of like a photographic project about my gender identity and queerness. Velusta in my native tongue, Telugu, literally translates to I will go and come back. So what's happening in this project is, this is how I look in Brooklyn. I have my hair up, I have an undercut, I have a beard, and there's a certain form of gender markers that I'm using to express my queerness. So my gender expression in Brooklyn looks a certain way, but when I'm visiting my family in India, I feel a little constricted because of the traditional gender norms there. So I'm put in a situation where I'm constantly negotiating my gender expression. So I have to decide, like, do I have my beard and go to a family gathering and be yelled at by my grandmother, or do I make peace? So that's me and my 4 strands of hair on my chin, which is my beard. So I decide to shave it. And when I do this, there's a certain level of anxiety that is popping up, and there's a certain level of dissociation that happens. And I kind of cope with that dissociation by taking photos. I am making self-portraiture. This is me trying on churidar, a traditional feminine clothing, for my friend's wedding. And when I do that, again, there's that level of dissociation happening. So I go to the rooftop and I make a portrait of myself with the clothesline of saris flying in the foreground to kind of ground myself in how I want to look like. I'm also making portraits of myself in gendered clothing while emulating people around me. And in this case, I'm kind of emulating my grandmother, elegantly sitting on the couch wearing a sari. Simultaneously, I'm also looking at how kind of gender pans out in your daily life in a Desi household. So this is my dad sitting at the head of the table, and when my dad's away, my mom takes that seat. So I'm making self-portraits, observing all of these gender roles and gender norms around me to kind of cope with that dissociation that happens. This is my mom running around, saging the house, my dad in the corner there, reading, watching something. So when in real time, when I'm taking these photos, all I'm thinking about is layering light and color. I'm not necessarily thinking about, like I have an idea of what I want to say, but I'm not necessarily thinking about the exact narrative, which is the process part of it, which I'll get to you in a second. This is my dad reading the newspaper in the morning while my mom is in the prayer room. I'm also observing the sari, which is a traditional symbol of femininity in India. I'm looking at how women interact with the sari. It is women playing, being active in the park in the sari, and women doing domestic work, and women hanging out in saris, and also women coming together for Dasra, Telugu festival. In this case, they're coming together to pray for the health and well-being of their husband/family. So irrespective of how I'm presenting myself in my hometown, either how I look right now or a much more traditional self, I'm always stared at by men. And so that is essentially kind of like the gist of the project, right? So now I'm kind of like gonna take you back to the process of it, so how I got here. In 2020, I went to India for the first time as an openly queer person. I came out to my family in 2019. I came out to myself in 2018. I thought I was straight all my life. Fun story, you can ask me later. So when I went back to India in 2020, I was taking photos of daily life in Vijayawada just to cope with all the feels that I have being back in my hometown as a queer person, as an openly queer person. That is my father taking a morning walk, and those are my friends hanging out by the Krishna River. And these are two temple cows. I was taken to this temple to pray for a good marriage. This is a woman doing domestic work, and this is a clothesline. So when I'm composing these photos, again, like I'm only thinking about color and light. So I took these photos in 2020. I came back with a lot of journal entries and a lot of photos, and I knew I wanted to say something. I don't know what I wanted to say. I knew I wanted to say something. And so I enlisted the resources I had in New York. I tapped into the New York Foundation for Arts. This is where it gets a little technical, hoping that it helps for the grads. I tapped into New York Foundation for the Arts, and I had a meeting with Michelle Levy for a document review for my artist statement. Here you see multiple drafts of my artist statement, like me trying to figure out what I want to say with all the photos and all my feelings and all my emotions. And I also signed up for a mentorship hour with this consultant, Gem Fletcher, based in London, and Gem kind of looked through my images and told me what was missing. What was missing was my feels kind of visually shown. Around that time, I was also talking about this project with Ira Block, my mentor and employer here. He's right there. And he was also suggesting making self-portraits with queer communities back in India. So I had all of these thoughts, and at which point I went back to India in 2022 to make more self-portraits. Here in this, we see my mom and I at the dining table. Essentially, we're doing the same thing, tying our hair up before having breakfast, but I showed up slightly differently. This is a slightly more masked version of myself. And again, when I created this portrait in real time, all I typically was thinking about was the morning light falling in a certain way on my hair. So I had to make sure that my hair is visible when I do that gesture, so it's kind of like tilted to the front. I was also thinking about how I want to have my shoulders, so like the black of my shirt is not mixing with the black of the chair. So these are like the compositional things that I think about. And when I say it's observational photography, it is, once I take these photos and come back to Brooklyn, I have that emotional distance from the project itself, and that is when I try to finish the narrative and finish what I want to say. In this case, I see the self-portraits of me, self-portraits, and then I see my mom's photos, and I see what's happening. We are showing up to the same space, but we are showing up differently. So I make this diptych kind of showing that. Nostalgia also plays a huge role in this series, and hence a lot of the images are kind of graded warmer than the cooler side. This is a self-portrait of me in a binder made, I made it in my Brooklyn studio, and it's placed against a negative of Krishna River in my hometown. So Telugu movies often depict flashbacks in kind of like a negative film, and I wanted to play around with that visual and this notion of looking back at something, essentially looking back at an older sense of self. So I still have a lot of affection and nostalgia for how I used to look. This project is still very much a work in progress. So this is a collage I made in Brooklyn. The photo of my mom sitting in leisure in a sari in her childhood home, and that is me sitting in a binder in my Brooklyn studio against a negative of photo of a collective of women in saris. The hope is that one day I'll be able to feel free of the gender norms, and so that I can show up like how I am in that photo in my hometown. And I want to mention here, it might, like, I still can kind of show up, but it's not emotionally safe for me, but there are spaces where I can fully express my gender in India. But the intention for this series is that how I show up to the space that I grew up in with a current version of the self without having to do that constant explanation and negotiation. This is very much an experimental collage I made. The background is again a negative of a woman hanging out in saris. So the sliver that you see where I'm visible in a traditionally gendered, oh wow, the photos are big. So the sliver that you see where I'm visible is the kongu, the part of a sari, and this is my current self, that's my old self, and that is a storefront in Vijayawada. So with all these images and the writing that I have, I built the application and I applied for Aperture Google Creator Labs Award grant in 2024, which I won last year. And this year I was lucky to be the resident for Center for Photography Woodstock to continue working on this project in October for a month using the resources available in their studios. So my creative practice is essentially using photo, video, audio, and text to tell queer and South Asian stories. Velosta was very much, quite obviously, a very personal queer story, and this project that I'm going to share is a South Asian story. This project is called 20 Years Since. It was made in 2021 in collaboration with SALT, South Asian Americans Leading Together, a nonprofit. This is a 10-part short documentary series highlighting the stories of young South Asian Americans growing up in a post-9/11 America. So we wanted to hear the narratives of these South Asian Americans, what being South Asian means to them, what does solidarity look like. So here's a trailer of that series.
I mean, I was 4, you know, when all of the 9/11 happened and when the aftermath happened, and so my whole life has been shaped by this.
I remember this girl, even before she could ask me my name, even before anything, she goes and she's like, if you hate America so much, why are you here?
For so long, like we are not the face of America. What an American person looks like you would not think of me, you would not think of a hijabi, you would not think of a Muslim woman or a brown woman.
The distance that being in diaspora and what that means.
South Asian American, like that is the label that I use, but I don't see them as two separate things.
Even being able to call myself an American is, resisting these popular narratives that these identities are separable.
And learning how to not internalize derogatory statements or violence or racism, and know that I can rise above it, and then we as a people can rise above it with proper education and compassion.
That is what brings me the most joy.
In being unapologetically South Asian, unapologetically Pakistani, I will be an authentic version of myself. So my joy comes from being an authentic version of myself and from passing this torch of authenticity to younger generations and older generations alike.
So this project was filmed in 2021, right in between the COVID crisis. So we were figuring out how to film Zoom interviews in an engaging way. So what you see is me with a 7200 and a Sony filming the screen of an iMac, but some of the people chose to be anonymous. So now I'm putting my mom's dupatta in front of the lens to create kind of like a bokeh or refractions to hide the faces. And I'm like switching up the lenses, switching up the angle to make sure the viewer is still engaged and the eyes are still on the screen when they're listening to the stories. This project was exhibited at Judson Memorial Church by Washington Square Park. Noor Khan, an artist based in Canada, created this video piece using the interviews that I filmed and archival footage, and she projected that onto a six wooden panel installation. I'm going to briefly talk through the process of the project and how we created this series. So SALT put out an open call for participants and a Google form that they filled in, and we collected the answers from. So then we noticed the themes that they wanted to talk about, and we started to frame the questions for the interview from these themes. SALT was influential in kind of my understanding of trauma-informed storytelling. So essentially, when you're talking to an individual who comes from an experience of facing discrimination or facing homophobia, how do we engage with that trauma from a place of empowering that narrator? So I'm not here asking you, tell me your deepest, darkest secrets so I can make a movie out of it. But it's essentially more about my role here as a translator. Your experiences are worth sharing and worth for the world to listen. So how can I assist you in sharing those stories and shaping that narrative? So now how does that look like? So when I'm asking, instead of asking, what was your first memory of facing discrimination, it's kind of reframed to, what was your first memory of overcoming or being protected from the discrimination? Or what did you incorporate to hide your identity is reframed to, what parts of yourself did you identify with as a child, or like what elements felt visible? So like that, I had tremendous help from SALT and Shruti, and we built this framework for telling this project because essentially we're dealing with negative experiences of a lot of young South Asian Americans. And we also did this in a very collaborative way. The edited transcript from the interview is always sent back to the narrator, and the narrator are given the power to figure out what they want to be highlighted in the video and what they want to be removed from the video. So as a photographer, being mindful of the fact that photography is empowering, but if not engaged in the right way, then it can also be exploitative. So at the end of the day, in my process, I see myself and my role as a translator in the storytelling aspect of it. So when I'm translating these stories into a more engaging format to the viewer, then what other elements can I add? So in this case, the obvious answer is I'm doing a video of these people. So what other things that can I add? So I asked the narrators to share something that reminds them of that time period. So Arshia Hussain, one of our storytellers, shared her progress report. She was born on September 10th, 2000, and that was her first birthday cake, and 9/11 happened. This narrator shared a book that was really significant in her process of processing her experiences, and we paired that with text from the interview itself. So it's always like thinking about, there's the obvious way to tell a story, and then there are like the storytelling elements around it that can add more context or illustrate the story or like make it more powerful. So when you like translate that to a film scene, like there's the obvious way of like filming two people, but then like you're adding more context in kind of what do the shelves have, like how does the couch look like, where are the pillows, etc. and that is the Judson Memorial Church. I'm gonna delve a little more technical into my creative process of it. So for me to have had that sense of framework for Velusta and 20 years since, there was like a lot of trial and error prior to that to what works and what doesn't work in creating a documentary project, or honestly like any creative project. So for me, the three pillars are intuition, intention, and research. So in intuition, there is like the pre-vision. So even before you know what you want to say, how you want to say it, or where you want to show it, etc., which is the vision, there is something like, I kind of want to say something, I don't know what is that. So that was kind of what it was for Velusta for me. So then you go back to the drawing board. Free writing is an exercise actually Katrine introduced to us in SVA. So now you have that idea seed and you're just writing whatever comes to mind around it. And then you read what you write and you kind of circle the phrases and circle the repetitive phrases or the words or the patterns that you see and the ideas that you want to explore. I'm going to illustrate that with another project that I worked on. In 2021, I photographed a project with the Sony Alpha Female Plus grant. I applied for an open call and I won the grant, and I built a documentary project around the 7 subway line. So when I'm talking about intuition for the International Express, that is the name of this project. The International Express, it was the intuition or the prevision part of it is I like trains. I like riding from last stop to last stop. So how can I make that a project? When I moved to New York in 2015, I was depressed for a couple of years, and that was essentially what I did. I rode the train from last stop to last stop. So when I did that free writing exercise for myself, all the repetitive phrases that I now fancily phrase are just train, 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 train. And some of it was community, train, color, community, and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, like what do I want to say about the 7 line? It is called the International Express. It goes through various diverse communities: Jackson Heights, Elmhurst, Corona, Flushing, Long Island City, Hudson Yards. And I love photographing communities and daily life. So then through that journaling and how can I explore these and what ties them all thematically outside the literal train that ties them all together. So figuring out the theme, then it's the intention part. You're questioning and you're reflecting and you're setting the framework. So here you're asking yourself, for me, it was like, what were some of the themes that I can explore in the project? In this particular project, I was helped by the time period that I was in. It was 2021, and so COVID could be one of the themes. So I wanted to photograph the working class communities that were affected by COVID. And a general theme in my work is photographing daily life. So I was curious to photograph what did daily life look like on the streets of Elmhurst? Like what were people buying? Where were people hanging out? What were the sounds that you were listening to? So, and then who is the project for? And what are some of the concerns I need to acknowledge? Like what neighborhood that am I photographing? Do they have any privacy or safety concerns? And then what impact do I want to achieve? The impact part is tricky and where I fumble a lot because impact can be political, it can be policy change, you can change perspectives, but impact can also be interpersonal. If a person likes taking their photo, take their photo, print it and give it back to them, and that is still impactful. And then it comes to research. The research aspect of this process was mostly, almost entirely, I would like to say, built from observing and learning from Ira. So there is past imagery, so you're looking at what projects existed in this theme, the community, like themes around community. And then you're understanding what access points you can have, and you're understanding how does information spread in these communities. If I go hang out in a particular hub in Jackson Heights, say maybe the triangle that, as when you get off the Roosevelt Avenue, the triangle. So when I'm hanging out with one uncle there, how does that uncle spread the information that I'm doing a photo project to other uncles and aunties? So like kind of understanding that spread of information and making sure you have that access in a respectful way. And then revising a shot list. So in this case, these are my notes from the 7 train. and that is a shot list. You see street vendor portraits, street scenes, 85mm close-up portraits, harsh sunlight, high contrast street leaf, kids playing, commuters getting into the train. I'm not going to read the whole thing. And so once I have this shot list, I'm going back and Googling what images of the 7 train have existed before. And then I'm looking at the stock websites and understanding where I can photograph this from. And you see Corona Yard at Flushing Meadows. Corona Park has that photo, so now I understand where I can get that, maybe exact that photo or like change up the composition to match my perspective. Once I have the shot list, then I'm on the streets photographing the project, my favorite part. The other thing I had in mind was to think of color. I wanted to incorporate reds, blues, and greens, but as vividly as possible and not in the color grading. So like I'm actually photographing either blue things or red things or in the blue hour sunset or at night times. That is Flushing, Queens. That is shopping in Jackson Heights. That is a view of Jackson Heights as seen from 7 Line. Kebab King has great chai. So you should all go. This is during COVID, every restaurant was trying to figure out outdoor seating, and this is a restaurant on Roosevelt Avenue right around Corona. This is Ergun Sherpa, president of the United Sherpa Association and a community leader and organizer who was doing mutual aid work for Jackson Heights. I'm losing. Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. More street vendors. And this is Rukaya, a Vietnamese woman who started a small business designing masks and hijabs because her husband lost his job due to the COVID pandemic. This is a view from the 7 Line looking towards Long Island City. You can actually see me right dead in the center right there. This is Bryant Park. So again, like I mentioned, the obvious aspect of that storytelling is the photo aspect of it, and then thinking about adding more elements to a project. So this was 2021. Everyone was on Instagram and everyone was making reels, just like now. So I was thinking of how to add vertical video component to what that neighborhood looks like. And when you think about the 7 subway line, at least for me, you think about the overhead train line. So you're thinking about the street vendors. So then you're thinking about, okay, like, what does that street vendors look like, but more importantly, sound like? So creating short montages like this to add more texture to a photographic project. This is, I'm going to walk through my portfolio, my editorial and commercial portfolio. So the projects that I've shown are my practice and what I'm also hired for, but I have been lucky enough to sustain myself in New York as a freelance photographer and director. So I'm typically hired to photograph people, be it working on stories about neighborhoods like I've shown, or photographing artists. So I wanted to quickly break it down on a couple of my favorite images. So this is actually an assignment I did for Jim Estrin's editorial class. It is on a neighborhood in Queens called Richmond Hill. I continued photographing this neighborhood even after graduating because I just enjoyed doing it. I've not finished the project yet, but I have a better sense of what I want to do and how I want to say the story. In the meantime, I was also leveraging this portfolio of work, of documentary work I had from school to be hired for my strengths, which is essentially photographing communities and neighborhoods. In this particular image, we see a group of Punjabi Sikhs beating up the dough to make rotis. So this image was taken in Langar, which is the community kitchen in Gurudwara, the holy place of worship for Sikhs. So most of my photography is a mix of very careful composition and then happenstance. So in this particular image, I was thinking about color and light, and so I wanted to balance the lights with what is to have a glimpse of what is under the table, and I wanted the focus on the dough, and I wanted all of the hands on the dough itself. So I was waiting for all of them to put their hands on the dough, and in the background is also busy. So I was waiting for the area between the two women, this part, to be cleared out. So now you have a better vision of what's happening in the background as well. And the fun part of taking photos, at least for me, is I'm always looking at the corners, and I always love filling up the corners with a surprise thing. So in this case, an old woman was sitting and doing the same thing, so I was waiting for her to start beating up the dough in that particular corner. So while this was very carefully composed, this was entirely happenstance, a chance photograph. I knew I wanted to include all of them in frame, and I knew I wanted to have the dough balls in the frame, but the symmetry, the lines, the colors, and their gaze, intuition, and just luck, and maybe some skill. So I leveraged that body of work and sent a cold email pitch to a New York Times photo editor. I'm pasting some screenshots just to see how a cold email looks like. I didn't get to publish this body of work, but I was onboarded to New York Times as a freelancer. This was another project that I did in school. It is called Out of Transit. It is essentially portraits of subway musicians, but taken portraits of them in the studio, and then photos of them of the empty spots that they perform at in the subway. So I was juxtaposing them and playing with this idea of, when you remove the talent from the subway, then the subways are boring. And a lot of talent is dissipated in the subway. So my intention at that point was, when you walk past a musician, pay 2 seconds of your attention. And so this body of work helped me leverage or position myself as a photographer for artists. And so this is one of a recent assignment that I've done for a pen plotter that he essentially codes into the computer and runs the pen plotter to make art. And I had dreams of this photo too. I wanted to light up the photo in a particular angle and light up the pen plot in a particular angle and take it from this way. So kind of carefully composing some of the shots for assignments. This is another artist, and her materials, she is a wood cutter, so I lit up the underneath of the wooden sheets to photograph her tools. So once I realized that I was kind of being hired for artist profiles from leveraging the body of work I made in school, I started filling in the cup back again. So I created a web series called Work in Progress in collaboration with my friends at Lalu Studio. These are 15-minute episodes to celebrate the messy act of creation. So what I'm doing here, I'm interviewing mostly my friends, my artist friends, queer, trans, Black, brown, and indigenous folks, to celebrate the messy art of creation. So the video focuses on, quote unquote, quite literally a work in progress. To kind of celebrate this notion that you are an artist irrespective of if you have a finished body of work or not. I'm gonna play the first 1 minute of these 15-minute episodes.
I think I'm a terrific dancer, by the way. Other people might not, but I think so. My name is Maya Vardraj. I'm a painter. I grew up in South India and I've been living in New York since 2011. The work in progress is a really new work for me, where I really allowed myself to experiment with just the act of painting. One of the things that I've kept intact from my education is the process of designing. So even if I'm painting, there's a lot of pre-planning that goes into the painting, choosing which photograph I want to work with, figuring out how I want to invoke that memory, choosing the surfaces, choosing the colors, etc. Especially with this piece, I felt like I wanted to be a little bit more loose. I hadn't painted in a while, and I felt like I wanted it.
Yeah, that's a glimpse. Sorry. So as I mentioned, my photography is like a combination of chance, intuition, and thought. And I sharpen that intuition quite often by photographing the streets of New York, trying to capture the quirkiness of the city. This wonderful person here was working out in Times Square at 3 a.m. This was right by where I was living in Bushwick, by Jefferson Street subway platform. So I positioned my camera for, I think, an hour and a half on Halloween. So I was photographing everyone that was coming out of that station. So that's Handmaid's Tale with Luigi Bros, bro. I don't know these costumes, but great. This is another assignment that I did for school. It is the quirkiness of New York, but the story is essentially, it's his first day as a Times Square character, in this case, Batman. So when I'm not photographing the quirkiness of New York City streets, then I'm looking for like Desiness, South Asianness in New York City. This was in Jackson Heights. This was in, I think, Times Square. I think this was in somewhere in Queens. And this was downtown Manhattan. So again, like, I'm playing with color, I'm playing with light and angles. This was again in Jackson Heights. That brings to the end of my talk. That is 20-year-old me photographing my friends and writing about my high school experiences. This is a photo of my hometown. You can see my watermark there that I used to do when I was 20. This was on a morning drive with my dad. And to end it, I'm gonna share an About Me section with no photo of my blog from 2009. I did my bachelor's in electrical engineering, dealt with fuses, and ended up shorting my own. I am now a media student with a master's in communications and another master's now in photography. Photo writing and music are my alter egos. Just another random person on earth trying not to be just another random person on earth. Thank you.
I want to go back to the photos of you and your mother.
Yes.
Because there's a mirror image of both of you, and I'm wondering if, there you go. Whoops.
Oh.
No.
This one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Has your mother seen these photos, and also how does she react to the photos of you and her, because you're so much alike in these photos? Is she, what's her response and feeling towards all this after having been the daughter that disappointed her?
the daughter that disappointed her is not about my queerness, it is about me leaving a career in the sciences, which I did my bachelor's in engineering. I needed to clarify that. Yeah, my mom has seen these photos. I don't think she has seen it in the perspective or like the narrative that I'm presenting it right now, but she does have an idea that I'm creating a whole project on my beard. So she kind of, now I think she's enjoying how alike we look and how exactly I look like her when she was 35. And her feedback on these photos is usually take photos of me when I look prettier. That's pretty much it. Otherwise, I think she always enjoys the engagement that I get when I present something. In this case, when I'm posting something on Instagram, she goes through all the comments and yeah, reads them and responds to some of them. So yeah, she's very engaged in my practice, yeah.
Hi, here. Thank you so much for sharing your creative process.
Yeah.
It was such a refreshing way to look at documentary strategy, like beforehand. My question was, do you sometimes be in a place where you're like connecting dots and patterns after you look at your images?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of that was happening with this project, Villasta, where I was photographing in India with a certain idea of what I wanted to say, but a lot of that connecting dots and patterns happen only after I come to Brooklyn, only after I am physically outside India.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you. Beautiful.
Wait, did you ask in real time or after?
Sorry?
Was the question
After.
about in real time?
Like when you're after you done photographing, do you like sometimes happen to connect the dots of the storyline more? Like
Yeah,
when you're done
that's
photographing?
pretty much what's happening. Yeah, but when you're talking about like documentary projects like Process, a lot of that connecting does happen also in post-production. It's like when you're editing a documentary film, like you are kind of shaping the narrative, but you're not altering the truth per se. But you are kind of playing Tetris with the script to figure out how to like tell it in an engaging way. Yeah.
Hi, it's good to be here today. I'm studying downstairs, so I saw this in the dorm, so I thought I'd come by. So I thought you have very honest work. I was thinking if you have any prompts in creating your photographs or in, because I've noticed that you are actually doing things that you like. For example, you like the riding trains and so on and so forth. Do you have any other prompts in working on your photographs and documentaries? Thank you.
I think the prompts are usually, the wider prompts are themes of themes of South Asianness, themes of identity, community, and understanding solidarity. And outside that, like quirky, like what is whimsical imagery or quirkiness, and how can I sometimes incorporate both? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I hope that answers the question.
Hi, Shra. Great work. Could you just briefly address the drawings in the presentation?
I am so glad you asked. I posted my partner right there to ask the same question, but you asked before her. Marco's question was to address the drawings in the presentation. So these are my ugly sketches, or what I want to call as ugly sketches. So this is, I started these as essentially kind of celebrating being bad at something. I don't need to perfect everything. This looks nice, but it started off ugly. So some of the drawings, where are they? Let me pull them out. That is my dad listening to me chit chat, and actually that is me in the mirror up there. So that is a self-portrait, guys. And there's another one that I wanted to quickly show. This is my mom. I think she was organizing her cash. Yes, that is her cash. Yeah. And I was talking to her. The perspective is off. Everything is off. That's the reason.
Really.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi. I especially liked your artist series, where one in particular where you've in the Subway series where you had the artists, you had the artist's instruments on the platform, but you photographed the artist in the studio.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, did you do more of those? And
Yeah.
I also like the fact that it was black and white. It was really, really well done, and it was beautiful. So I'm really curious to know if you did more, and are you going to do more of those?
That was my thesis project for SVA. It was called Out of Transit. I actually have them right here. That's Carl Storkman performing at 23rd Avenue.
I really loved the way you laid it out also.
Yeah, thank you. It's just a simple beauty dish on this side.
No, simplicity, got it. Yeah. It's really beautiful.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, that's Jameer Dewan, Joe Doman, Natalia, Savannah, and William. Yeah, that was my thesis project for school.
So you had them come here?
Yes, to the studio. Yes,
They were photographed in the studio
yeah,
here?
they were photographed. I thought you were asking, are they coming to busk here? Well, they can. Yes. So the process was I was taking the subway last stop to last stop and kind of scouting for buskers, and then I go up to them. I ask for a coffee chat, and then I tell them about the project and get to know each other, and then I invite them to the studio. Yeah. Thank you.
Do you have any tips on like approaching strangers and having that talk and just getting up the nerve to insert yourself into these situations and not just be an onlooker that then passes by?
Yeah, my confidence in approaching strangers really depends on the day, the month, and the week. So I think my tips would be to kind of read their body language before you approach them, observing them for maybe a couple of minutes before you go up to them asking for a photo. Yeah, that is the biggest thing that I've learned, especially in New York. Some people, like I once was photographing on the High Line. I was not photographing a stranger, but this person just came up to me and like broke my umbrella and yelled at me and walked away. So it's a very New York experience. It's a New York rite of passage. But yeah, kind of like being hyper vigilant of what their body language is looking like. Yeah. Yeah.
I apologize in advance. This is a little bit of rambling, but in my lifetime, some things have that were normal now seem insane, right? So, like, I remember when Queen Elizabeth died. If I was like editing the New York Times, the headline would be like, "Can you believe there was a queen?" You know, like it seems insane in my lifetime, whereas it seemed totally normal before. So when I think of queer identity and the issues that people face, I think so often in my lifetime we've been asking people for tolerance or acceptance, but that seems like we're asking for a favor from them when I attack my family because they love it. You know, I'm like asking them, well, why wouldn't you? You're like, I'm not asking them for a favor of acceptance. I'm saying, well, what even was your justification for ever having intolerance of any kind? You know what I mean? So when I think about this, when you go and you're talking with people in your community, whether it's here or home, wherever home is now, you know, do people have reasons? I mean, does it feel like they're coming around in? You know what I'm saying? in the generation from when I was a kid, it seemed totally normal. There was just men and women, and pot wasn't legal, and you know, all of these things were just totally normal. And now you look back at it and it seems insane. So are some people coming around to realizing that it was insane to have anything other than acceptance and tolerance? Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Coming around accepting, or coming around?
Yeah, coming around and accepting, but not just accepting, being like, oh my God, what was I even engaging in before at all?
Oh, that kind of like retrospective thinking might not easily come for, at least in my experience, Desi parents. So there is that coming around for acceptance, but not necessarily, what was I even thinking? Like, this is what feels normal. So that kind of like normalizing of a concept that they don't understand doesn't immediately happen. Yeah.
Does it happen at all over time?
It does. Yeah. It does happen over time. Well, like in my case, yes, it does. It did happen over time. It took my my mom and my parents essentially to Google what supporting a gay kid looks like, or what does lesbian look like. What do you mean by queer? Like what are these words that you're using? So it does take some time. Well, I got lucky. It might not happen at all for other people, and many queer folks are in danger, but. Yeah, both truths exist. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Love it. Thank you. Any more? Yes, great.
Yeah, thanks for presenting. Just getting back to your thesis project, I'm just curious to know how you feel MPS just really prepared you kind of for your career, and just how vast it seems to be now, right? What foundation do you feel like you got at SVA and with work like this to kind of do what you do now?
So before I moved for a master's in SVA, I was working as a photographer back in India. I was predominantly doing wedding and music. So I think for me, SVA helped me understand photography as a service and photography as an art form. So like I was providing services like wedding and music photography, and photography as an art form is would have talked about like figuring out what you want to say and how you want to say it. The foundation that I kind of had at MPS was understanding that unique voice of what I want to say and how I want to say it, applying that to my projects. And then also figuring out how I can bring that unique voice to the assignment work that I'm being hired for. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Great. Anyone else? All right, let's give it up for Shravya. Thank you so much.
Thank you.